everyone, I'm Cassie. I hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining me today. So today I'm going to be reading The Big-Little Dinosaur by Darlene Geis. So let's get started. Danny was a big little dinosaur. He was big because his kind of dinosaur was tremendous, and he was little because he was still quite young. Danny lived in a swampy marshland during the days when the world was new. Giant ferns and mosses grew everywhere. Some of them were as tall as trees, and they grew as thick and green as a jungle down to the water's edge. Even the water had green plants growing in it. The world was very strange in those olden days. Wonderful and strange creatures lived on it. But it was a lonely place for little Danny, for ever since he had hatched out of his egg, he didn't know to which family he belonged. Someday I'll find out, he thought. But in the meantime, Danny ate and ate and ate. He was always nibbling on green ferns and moss. One day, a large bat-winged creature flapped down out of the sky. It folded its leathery wings and looked at Danny. "What's your name?" Danny asked. "Pterodactyl, the wing finger," the big flying creature answered. "Hello, Pterodactyl," said Danny. "Glad for the company. May I go along with you?" "You may if you can," the pterodactyl said with a sly grin. "But I do something you can't. I fly." And with that, the pterodactyl stretched his big wings and flapped off. "I certainly don't belong to the pterodactyl," sighed Danny, and he ate some more plants. Suddenly, Danny heard a strange rattle and clatter nearby. Now what, he wondered. And then he saw an odd sight. Out of the undergrowth marched a dinosaur in armor. Curving up from its neck, over its high back, and down its long tail were two rows of sharp bony plates that rattled when the animal walked. And at the tip of that remarkable tail were four strong, sharp spikes. "Ouch," thought Danny. "I wouldn't like to bump into him, but any company is better than none at all," so Danny called out, "Who are you?" The armored dinosaur turned his tiny head. "I'm Stegosaurus, the armored lizard," he answered proudly, and Stegosaurus rattled his bony plates. "I'm going to eat some plants down near the water." "I eat plants too," said Danny. "May I come along?" Stegosaurus nodded his little head yes and marched on. Danny followed happily. Stegosaurus and Danny were feasting peacefully on tender green plants when suddenly the earth beneath their feet shook. There was a sound like the rumbling of thunder. What could it be? Danny was alarmed, but Stegosaurus went right on chewing. "It's Brontosaurus, the thunder lizard," he explained with his mouth full of leaves. "He's so heavy it sounds like thunder when he walks." Danny peeked through the ferns. There he saw not one but two enormous creatures plodding down to the water's edge. Their legs were as big around as tree trunks. Their long necks stretched up toward the sky. Their even longer tails dragged heavily behind them. Thump, thump, thump. With each step they took, the ground shook and tumbled under their great weight. "How frightening," thought Danny. But the huge dinosaurs were minding their own business. They kept moving slowly toward the water, stopping once in a while to snap off a green leaf. Their heads turned this way and that as they chewed, and they looked gentle. "Why, even though they're so big," thought the little dinosaur, "they're not fierce at all." In fact, Danny thought that they were the most beautiful creatures he had ever seen. They were moving out into the deep water, and the little dinosaur looked after them sadly. "How I would like to do that," said Danny. But Danny was afraid he was too small, and he didn't know if he could go out into the water, so he sighed and went on munching leaves. All at once there was a snorting and crashing in the underbrush. It sounded terrible. "Goodness, what's that?" Danny asked. But Stegosaurus was shifting his huge armored body around so that he stood between Danny and the bushes. "Into the water, quick! It's Allosaurus, the giant meat eater," he declared, "and you're his meat." Danny asked no more questions. He moved into the water as fast as he could. The giant Allosaurus came leaping out of the underbrush with his huge jaw snapping. But Stegosaurus kept him from the water's edge. Whack, whack. A few mighty slaps with that spiked tail, and Allosaurus went limping back into the jungle to tend his wounds. Thank you, Stegosaurus, Danny called to his friend from the water. But Stegosaurus was rattling his armor proudly and didn't hear. I'm alone again, thought Danny sadly, and he bent his head to nibble on one of the water plants. Just then, 2 big dinosaurs came up beside him. Hello, little brontosaurus, they said gently. So that's what I am? Danny exclaimed. I'm a brontosaurus? And he moved over closer to the 2 huge dinosaurs. The 3 dinosaurs stood there like 3 islands in the quiet water. 2 large islands and 1 small one, all eating plants. How nice not to be alone anymore. The strange new world seemed safe and happy now. Danny had finally found his family. So that was the story of the Big Little Dinosaur. I hope you enjoyed it. Come back next Sunday for another story. I hope you have a fabulous week and remember to be kind. Bye.